Welcome. Today, we're going to talk about testing. Testing is the process of basically checking our work and looking for bugs that the user would encounter that would disrupt the process of using our interviews. When you're building your interview, you are often saving and running from your playground and checking that changes that you've made work and work how you want them to work. And that is kind of a mini testing that you do as you build. And when you're doing that, what you start to think about is this kind of map that you've made. When questions talk to one another, or the result of a question changes the user's experience, meaning showing or hiding different questions because they've answered an earlier question one way or changing what we need, we're building a map. And that map kind of branches different directions. And what we need to do is test to make sure that all of those different paths that a user could take work. And you've been doing that as you build, and you're starting to think about all the different ways that somebody could get through the interview, and all the different kinds of people that would be taking our interviews. But what we do at the once you have an MVP is start to test it and make sure that what you've built in your map fully works. And just to be more explicit about what branching means, it's if I ask you a question that's a yes or no. And so if I say, what is your name? And you give me Scotty, it gives me beam me up. But if you give me anything else, it's just going to say, hi, how's it going? That is a branch. And we've gone two different directions and we're getting two different results. So what we would want to test is what happens in both of those and make sure that those are the only paths that we get and that it's always the same on that result. And so what we do is we basically write all of those down and we go through them with somebody who didn't write our uh, interview and ask them to give it a go because they don't have the same expectations and they don't kind of gloss over some of the things that we tend to as we are building for ourselves. So I have an example. We're going to go through how we set up the scenarios, how to write them out, and look at one or two together. And then once we're done, your job is going to be to go through and actually do one of the scenarios for this test. Try it out and see how you feel going through the process. So when we start testing, the first thing on our testing board is to create testing scenarios. So today we're going to be working with the motion to vacate housing form. That is what MTV stands for, and that is where our Trello card is currently living. When you set up your testing scenarios, you're going to need to create a few different links. The first link is a place that that the interview can live for people to actually run through it. So the job is first to put it on what we call the testing server. Um, you can reach out to someone to help you go through that. It's just installing it somewhere so that a short link will run it for you, and you don't have to run it from your playground by pulling in the package. You just give your testers a nice and convenient link. So that's one of the links that we need to provide here. And then what we need to create is the scenarios and a place for all of the results to go. So let's start with our scenarios. So what you do to create these scenarios is you think about those questions that talk to one another or have logic or are custom and you want to make sure are working right. So for the MTV housing, we this is not a full list of every question that's asked. If we look at the interview, we'll see that we have this first question that's a yes or no that I've not listed. removing a default judgment, and we ask, do we have the judgment in front of you? If you say no, you don't get to go further. If you say yes, we're going to start getting questions like, what is your name? So this question, removing a default judgment, is not on my list of questions in my matrix because I've sufficiently tested it when I built it. And I did not build this interview, but when you're building the interview, it's sufficiently tested. Your testers will not get a result if they can't move past this question, and they will quickly find out that they just need to hit yes to move forward, and it doesn't need to be tested. Then questions like what is your name are in the package of questions that are already written for you. Our developer for this one did not write this question. It's tested in pretty much every interview in the document assembly line project, and there's no need for our testers to rigorously test this one. So we can just move forward and don't need to test them. Same thing with what is your address. Um, doesn't It's a standardized question that comes from the assembly line package. We are not responsible for testing those. You want to make sure and check that it's showing up on your form properly, but it's not going to be the job of our tester to do that for us. We're going to look at that and check it every time. It's not really what we're looking for. Interpreters also a standardized question. The plaintiff's name is a standardized question. Things like that, that either it shows up in the right place or it's not, is just something for you to check when you get to see the result of all your testers. You don't need to give the tester specific instructions, and it's not part of that map, though it is an input. It's not part of the map, and it's not really what we are rigorously looking at right now. Docket number is another thing that we just should always show up, should always go in the right place, but it's not what we're thinking about. Again, the court selector is one of those. But here is one that is probably custom made by the developer, and we want to test it at least one time. Make sure that we know exactly what got put in is exactly what's getting output. And so I did include this question in our matrix. So what is the matrix? This matrix is going to help us set up all those possible different branches and different ways that somebody could go through the interview. So we have on both axes the same questions, but these are the ones that we want to test. So date of default judgment is the first one, and I want to test it one time, make sure that we get the exact answer. These here are answers that are potential answers to the next question. And I want to rigorously test that each one of these answers works properly and that combinations of these answers work properly, meaning that I see what I think I'm going to see when I select these. So if I select, I never got a notice about the court date and I was unable to make it onto the Zoom hearing, I want to make sure that both of those show up and cause what I think is going to cause. Here, that means writing in the document these two answers as part of their explanation. So I have each of those broken out in my matrix because I want to test each of them in combination with one another and separately. So it's not actually the question, it's the answer to the question. And then these questions here have some reliance on each other. So if you ask, we're going to ask, have you already filed an answer with the court right here? And if I say no, I get, are you planning to file an answer? But had I answered yes, we are asked to upload that answer. And so we're going to want to test both those paths, whether I say yes here and upload now, whether I say no and then answer here and whatever, and continue that next branch, that second layer of yes and no here. So that's what we're doing with these up here. And there's an upload that comes after this one if you say yes, and after this question if you say yes. So I'm going to want to test and make sure that my upload works. And then it asks them to sum it up if they upload. So every time I upload, you'll see they should be summing it up because those questions should always appear after one another. And every time I say, yes, I have an answer, now I upload. And every time I say I'm planning to file an answer and I say, yes, I have an upload. You see that here, here, and here. So that's what should be happening. And I'm testing all those combinations and at the same time testing some of my other combinations that I wanted to talk about. The question, did you get a notice from the sheriff or constable that says you'll be removed, is also then, if you say yes, you'll get this follow-up question. But if you say no, you should not get this follow-up question. And I've combined that with a few different um, earlier answers where I'm uploading. Just because this question comes after, I want to make sure that none of the logic that's ahead of it has any connection. It shouldn't have any connection to these logic questions. And by logic, I mean if I say yes, something happens. If I say no, something happens. My answers change what happens after. And so these should be entirely removed from that. And I want to make sure I'm testing it that if I say no all across, I can still answer the question. If I say yes in a different combination, I can still answer these questions, that it's entirely removed. And building this, it comes from the developer because you know what should be happening, what questions should and shouldn't happen. And that's why the developer is responsible. Sometimes when you go across the matrix and because they're the same on both sides, you're going to get tons of duplicates that we've already created, and you're going to get some that you just don't need to test. So I don't need to test every single possible combination of why somebody missed their court hearing, right? I'm testing each of them independently, and I'm also testing them all together, and I'll test some combination of a bunch of them, but not all of them. Um, and what these do, how I read them is I read it across. So here we're going to test that the default judgment is correct date when we put it in, and that when we select I never got a notice about the court date, that goes on there. And then it doesn't matter what else the user answers. Those are the two things that we're testing with this scenario. We help the user and tell them the shortest way through the interview, but they can choose to do whatever we want. With this scenario, that's what we want to test, and those are the details that we've provided. So if we move into the scenarios tab, the first thing I've done is written up a little story about somebody who could be in that actual situation in our scenario. So going back to our matrix, I care about when the default judgment was the date of the default judgment, and they never got a notice about the court date. That is the story that we are telling, and those are the details that we want to see. So I've told Jessica Jones that they live in an apartment and they have been unable to pay their rent because of the pandemic. She missed a court date because she never got a notice about it. She has not filed an answer to the court before this mishap, and the default judgment date is 5/23/21. After the scenario, you see a few answers to those, what I was calling logic questions, the questions that if we say yes or no, we get a different path. This is the shortest way through by saying no to all three of those questions. And because we're not testing them, I just want to give the user my shortest path. And then this is going to help them use the selector. This is what we are testing in this one. And here I gave the date that I cared about. So I want the tester who actually goes through the interview and runs the scenario is going to put this information in and mirror this as Jessica Jones. Then over here we have linked documents. comments on the outcome, and a link to the video. So for every form that we're testing, we set up a folder and we're going to ask everyone to upload the resulting PDF and a video of how they went through the testing process or their scenario for each one. So whoever runs this would get a resulting PDF that they will upload here, copy a link to the document, and copy a link to the video. We ask that you share your screen on a Zoom, record it, and close it once you've run it. Upload that also to the Google Drive and provide a link so that if there is an issue, when I, the developer, am reviewing all the scenarios, all the tests that have been run, the resulting PDFs, and I see there's a problem, it's not what I expect from the scenario, I'm going to go through, watch the video, see what happened, and if there's something that's not supposed to happen, that's my opportunity to go back and fix it before it gets to our real users in development. So this is a very simple one. I'm testing one of the reasons for missing it, and the date, and make sure the date shows up properly. Actually, I'm going to move this column over because this comes up first in our test. If I'm just thinking about the order that the questions are asked, the reason for missing comes before any of these questions are asked. So that'll just help our users do this um, even faster. So let's talk about maybe one of the more complicated ones. So here is just an example of one that we want to check that I can select all of the reasons and they all get listed and they look clean and they are properly formatted. It looks professional for our user. But if you'll notice, another thing that would be good is to not test other with all of these, because other kind of works differently and we want to make sure that um, they all work together. So I would want to select all of these, run a test with that, and one where I do other and fill in and make sure that other has no effect on these. You see how it kind of separates out? It's because it works a little bit differently. Um, and I don't have a scenario here for that, but when I was writing them, I was thinking about that. And so I actually have an extra one, and it's all pre-populated, but not other, and all pre-populated and other. And those are the things that you have freedom to do if your matrix doesn't really result in that kind of um, answer, but it's something that you just want to double check. You don't have to entirely rely on your matrix. You can create some extras for people to fall through. But just looking at another one all the way across. So here we want to test that they did not receive notice of the Zoom hearing and that they are planning to file the answer, that they answer yes with that second question. So they haven't already filed one, but they are going to answer. And then that they get the upload screen, that the upload works, that they sum it up in some way. They can, copy and paste the whole scenario if we want, and that they did get a notice and that the notice goes in properly. So we are testing, I did not receive the notice of the Zoom hearing is how I'm going to find it. And that is this one. And so Donna got sick and was in the hospital for a few months. She missed her rental payments, and after she recovered, she reached out to her landlord to pay in full, but the eviction process had already started. And then she missed it because she didn't get notice, believing the post office has stopped delivering her mail because it's so full. She plans to use the Made Eviction tool and uploads the answer to the motion to vacate. So that is an answer to no here, right? So if I go back, excuse me. If I say um, no to a previously filed answer, no, but then I say yes to filing a future answer, yes, we'll get the upload screen, and testers can upload just any PDF or document. It can be a random one. They don't need to do um, like a real document that is uh, going to look the same for every test as long as it's an attachment. They do next. Tell the judge why you should not be evicted. Basically, our sum it up question. If I was a tester, I would just copy and paste this information, get a nice paragraph. We'll see that I cannot spell. That would be a great amount of text for them to check, see how much fits, how much doesn't. Then what else did we say? And she does have a removal notice. Yes. And I didn't give the user any information about when the removal notice is, so that is fine. The one above, if you see actually here, now he's got a notice from the sheriff that moved on June 10th at 9 a.m. because on the matrix, I wanted to test this one time. I wanted to make sure it goes to the right place, and that's really it. But I didn't need to do it every single time and check to that level of detail. So here I can just say, it's going to happen today at the current time. I'm really down to the wire. Go all the way through. Download the resulting PDFs to the folder. This is another standard question that's already built in for our user. So I would download it from here with the cover page and all, instructions, my results, download it, upload it, give them a link. If I saw something as a tester, it is appreciated and welcome to give it a review. It's very helpful if you see something that's not what we're looking for, and share the link, and then that scenario is fully run. So the job of a tester is to really come in and do these tests. Your job is not to build the matrix or even really fully understand the matrix. You want to kind of come in pretending that you don't know anything, that you are this person that the scenario is written about. And your job is to go through with a keen eye, thinking about how the questions are being asked to you. If you think that you got asked something in a weird order, let people know. That's why the recording is really helpful to see if it was a glitch, or maybe they just need to edit and make a revision and you've brought up a point that they haven't thought about before. But what this really does is make sure that it's ready for your use and that we are doing more good than harm and not going to confuse someone or give a product that is going to make anything look unprofessional. We want everything to be really polished, and this is a really, really important part of that. And for the developer, when you make these scenarios, it really causes you to stop and think about what you built, how to untangle it, and all of the pieces of the puzzle. So your assignment is going to be to come in, throw your name down as a tester, run through the whole sheet, run through the scenario, provide the link to the document, which is on the folder is on the Trello card, testing folder, provide the um, any comments and provide a video of you going through. You don't have to talk about it at all. You don't even need to unmute your microphone. Just start a new Zoom by yourself, share your screen, and run through it. And once we have all of these done, we will now have a fully tested form and we'll be closer to launching this one. So great work and thank you very much.